Awesome. All right. Well, there is a lot of people on already, and we've got a lot to cover. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our 2-year anniversary episode of SEO for Bloggers. It is crazy to think that we've really been doing this for 2 years already. Little clap to the panelists who show up every single month and answer all of your guys' questions. But today we're gonna totally make it completely different. This is gonna be very informal. We're going to basically address any question that you have about SEO and content. We can't address weather specific questions, but as long as it's SEO or content related, we've got you covered. So inside the Q&A box is where you're going to want to drop all of your questions. You can submit them at any time. We're going to do a segment at the beginning, and then we're going to open up and do a whole episode just open Q&A. So if you have questions ready to go, start putting them into the Q&A box to make sure that they're answered. But we couldn't do a 2-year anniversary episode without giving away a ton of prizes. So we want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors who have contributed a bunch of prizes that we're going to be giving away live on this episode. It's a lot, so brace yourself. We've got Tastemaker Conference is giving away 2 tickets to the virtual Tastemaker Conference that's happening in September. SEMrush is giving away 1 6-month Guru account subscription to SEMrush. Food Blogger Pro, there we go, is giving away 1 year of membership. Feast is giving away a 1-year subscription to the Feast plugin. NerdPress is giving away a site speed audit. Shout out, Andrew. Top Hat Rank is giving away 3 It Depends SEO for Blogger t-shirts, which are currently in production. Top Hat Content is giving away a $100 donation to the charity or nonprofit of your choice. And finally, MediaWise will be giving away 2 $50 Visa gift cards. That's a lot of prizes. Lots of opportunities to win, but how do you win, you ask? Well, anytime one of these lovely panelists says it depends, we release
magic keyword.
Release a prize. Yep, that's the one. So you have to be live in attendance. The way that we're going to pick is as soon as they say it depends, I'll go through the attendee list, pick someone at random, and then we'll announce what you won and who was the winner. I have everyone's email address because everyone registered, so I will email you afterwards with how to claim your prize. So there's nothing that you need to do other than just enjoy the webinar. Speaking of our lovely panelists, though, let's go over who we have with us today, because as you can see, we have someone new. Per usual, though, we have SEO experts Casey Marquis, Arsen Rabinovich, and Andrew Wilder. But we also have a very, very special guest joining us, Louisa from Google. Thank you so much for joining us, Louisa.
Yay.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So go ahead, and I see we have 12 questions in the Q&A. Don't slow it down. As soon as you think of a question, drop it in. It can be about anything SEO and content related. There's no question too big or too small, and everything that gets submitted will get addressed, whether we answer it live on this call or a week later when we publish the recap. Okay, that was a lot of housekeeping. So let's have some fun. Louisa, we're going to get started with you. Can you first give us a little bit of background about yourself and what you do at Google?
Sure. So specifically, I am on the Google Trends team, and I really hope that everyone on this call has an idea of what Google Trends is. And if you don't, you're certainly going to hear a lot about it today from me. And so I hope by the time the call is over, you will be a super fan. But essentially what we do, Google Trends is a platform that Google provides for free. I still can't believe that it's free with the amount of information that it provides. But basically within this platform, you can see a few different things, but I would say the primary targets are a real-time stories feed of what are the top news stories that people are searching for the most. And really to kind of go back a little bit into my background, I've worked in news SEO, which is a very niche segment of SEO, I would say. There aren't that many of us out there, but this sort of tool was truly invaluable before I got to Google, because when you're pitching stories to editors and to writers, you really want to be able to give them that backing on it, that people legitimately want more information on this. And when Google is sending that signal, they have this platform that's putting that up there and saying, these are definitively, the most searched for stories right now. That really helps you to kind of sift through the noise. The other part of the tool that's fantastic is if you're not in the pitching phase, if you're already working on a story, keyword research is, I think, like the most, important part of Google Trends. So if you already have like a topic that's in the works, you can go in there and start to zone in on what are the keywords that you really should be prioritizing within that content to best connect with your search audience. So I love it. I was a huge fangirl for it before I worked at Google. And then it really felt like going to the mothership by the time, I got into this role and kind of peeking behind the curtain with it. But yes, live it, love it. Google Trends is fantastic, but that's where I am now. And prior to that, I worked in news SEO.
Awesome. Could you kind of explain to us how something can trend in Google Trends? How does that work and something becomes trendy?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the kind of figures that we have within Google Trends, if you're in the platform, so there are two, if you do like an individual search on something, there's like a search bar where you can start any sort of search. If you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see two different types of queries. You have top queries and then you have rising queries. These are both important, but they serve slightly different purposes. So top queries are going to remain more evergreen. They're kind of what they sound like. It's just what has, the most consistent search interest on that particular topic. That's what those terms are. But rising queries is really more so where it's like the trending queries. So what those are is for whatever date range that you put into Google Trends, because you also select a date range when you're doing a search. Any rising query that you're seeing pop up at the bottom, that is there's a value that goes along with it. You'll see usually if it's popping down there like a plus sign, and then however much of a percentage that it's trending, that it's been up. So that's always a great indicator, is to look at the rising queries. And the other best way to describe them is whatever time range that you had put in, that value that you're seeing with the plus sign and the percentage is the amount that term has accelerated in search interest compared to the previous period. So that's always a good indicator of this is truly like trending right now. And that's why it's kind of different from a top query, because that's something that's going to be more consistent. Those don't shift around as often.
Okay, that makes sense. You mentioned prior to being at Google and working in the Google Trends department, being more like in-house for SEO. How would you use something like Google Trends for an individual brand? Like how can you really take advantage of the information from a brand perspective?
Absolutely. So, I think in so many ways it depends. And you have to know exactly like what product are you working with and how are you going to adapt the Google Trends structure to really like serve your advantage, like what kind of information that you're looking for. So I would say with any sort of product, you can go into Google Trends and that almighty search bar. I always refer people back to the search bar. That's where you can look up anything that you would want to know about. And I think like any sort of product that anyone on this call works with could be game for that search bar, and start there. I think another great way to use Google Trends is to play around with the date ranges. So depending on like what target you have, say you're putting out like an SEO plan within a month, within 6 months, whatever it might be, you can adjust the little date range in Google Trends to see, okay, I want more current kind of information. Like I'm only interested in what have people been searching around this product over the last month. But you also might have a different project where it's like, oh, I actually want more evergreen information. Like what were people consistently looking at with this over the last 12 months? So that's another really cool part of Google Trends, is that you can switch up that date range. One other thing that I'll mention too that's fantastic about it, and I use this all the time in newsrooms, is for planning purposes. If you're, say it's like Halloween, right? And you're working with a brand where it's like, we know we want to roll out 5 pieces of Halloween content in October. You don't want to slam it all, at once and get it all published. You want to have it kind of spaced out. Something I really love about Google Trends is with something seasonal like Halloween, you can look up Halloween in Google Trends, go to either like the past 5 years, or I would say the since 2004 filter. That's basically like all time, because that's when the data started. And look, because with something like Halloween, it's going to be more consistent and seasonal with user behavior. That's something that's nice about it. People tend to get interested around the same time. So that can help you to pinpoint, oh, I know now when interest tends to go up, and then you can plan your, content appropriately around that. So that's another cool hack for Google Trends, even beyond just like the keyword research, to know how to plan your content and, map it out as well on a timeline.
I love that. I love the seasonality aspect of it, because bloggers, I mean, every season is a completely different feature, and they get so much seasonal traffic. And so that's a great way to really use Google Trends and kind of amplify when's a good time to start promoting.
Oh, use it and love it. That aspect is great.
Totally. As far as topics, it kind of sounds like not just from like a calendar perspective, you could utilize Google Trends, but it sounds like you could totally use Google Trends to come up with new topic ideas. Do you have any kind of strategies for doing that?
Yeah. So I think like a really good way to start would just be, so I'm going to give an example, since I know we have a lot of recipe fans in the house, and I'm also a huge like Googler with recipes and things like that. So say, it's summertime. So I've been thinking about barbecue a lot. I don't know about you guys. It's on my mind all the time in the summer. And I actually, pulled some research on this recently using the front end, so I can kind of reflect on that. But say I know that I want to do a piece of content on, barbecue of some kind, but I'm not really sure like what types of barbecue are popping in interest. I mean, there really are a lot of different ways that you could tackle that topic. It's quite broad. So if you were to look up like barbecue in your search bar in Google Trends, if you went down, this is really where I like to use the rising queries, because they're pretty much like those trending queries with those special angles that you could jump on. So something that, I recently saw down there was you're going to see, types of barbecue grills. That's one angle you could go for, provide that sort of resource to people. You might see different types of trending barbecue sauce that could be down there. So you could go in the barbecue sauce angle. You might see different, styles of barbecue. So it's like, Missouri versus Texas. You might see that kind of dueling. Another awesome feature of Google Trends is that you can use that search bar as a comparison. So something that was kind of fun that I did recently was comparing, the core types of barbecue that we have in the US, just to see which one, reigned supreme. I mean, I believe when I looked it up, it was Texas style barbecue. But that could be one way to narrow down your scope as well. So if you were wondering like, I'm not really sure like what kind of barbecue recipe I should feature, you could go in, look at that to get a better assessment of search interest, and then make your content based off of what those results said. So I mean, I think like the rising queries is just the money for, really brainstorming in that way, because you look up a general theme up at the top, but then you'll find those little nuggets. I agree. I mean, I love Texas barbecue. I do. I just love the comment. I do. I love it all though. I don't touch. But yeah, I mean, please like use that, love that. That is so helpful when you just have like a general theme, but you're trying to narrow it down. You can find some really good nuggets in there.
Awesome. When using an AI content generator, and I actually saw this question in the chat already, so people are definitely really curious about this and what your opinion is on this. Kim S specifically asked this when she registered, but when using an AI content generator, in basically using all those recommendations for how a piece of content should be structured, would you say that that's a appropriate way to do things and actually get a piece of content to show up on Google Trends and become a trending piece of content? Or how would you recommend actually structuring content to become something that's trend worthy?
Yeah. So great, like two-part question. First off, I do believe that there's like a place for, AI. I understand that it's the future. I get the advantage that it provides, especially in very time sensitive moments where like urgency plays into it. I've been in a newsroom before where that sort of like bot feature is very, very helpful when there just isn't the bandwidth or like that physical person who can, piece something together initially. So there definitely is a place for AI within this world, because it can kind of tie together and create that like basic format to get the SEO train going. So I believe in that, but I would immediately back that up with, something that I've really made like a cornerstone of my own like SEO, kind of ideology and training sessions. I never want SEO to become completely robotic. That's something I always push for in all of my trainings is, I think that human touch still does make a difference. Something that I remind people of all the time, and because it comes up, is this is, SEO headlines, especially that we would write in news. They are user facing. They're not just for Google. Like you're going to have people who are looking at them within the Google search results. So I think it's really like a combination of, the two. I see the place for AI, but I think ideally you want to complement that with that sort of like human voice and human touch to create the best article possible. Because I don't want that ever to be lost. And especially in the world of news, I think that's, so crucial to hold on to that because it makes the content that much more like captivating and interesting to read. So that's what I would say on that. And then you had generally asked, what are kind of like the cornerstones for creating topics, that can get, trending and, things like that. I'm always, I sound like a broken record, but like keywords, it's really important, even if you're like branching out into new territory, because this would come up in newsrooms quite a bit where it'd be like, oh, I'm writing an article on, something that's not really SEO, worthy, like it's something very unique. It hasn't really, broken out yet. Like I'm the one who's breaking it out. And what I would always say to that is, yes, I get that to a certain extent, but there's always other related keywords within your content that might not be like the central theme that's brand new, but they are like related and they're within that like scope. So you always want to find those opportunities to incorporate those when you can, so that you're not just starting from like a complete zero base, if that makes sense. So I think like just pushing that keyword strategy, always trying to be inventive, find those related angles in is really important when it comes to, then getting the trending juices flowing and building those connections that could actually lead to traffic. So yeah, I love that there's been so many kitty comments. I'm sorry, it distracted me and now I love it. Yeah, so I think like that all plays into it. And then, this is just me playing my like training hat on, but obviously making sure that you're hitting those keywords within your SEO headlines, within your title tags, making sure that you're driving that strategy there. Internal linking. I am a giant fan of internal linking. Any and all websites need internal linking. And, it really doesn't matter where you're starting. I actually had a call with a friend, a little while ago. And, we were talking about this with his new website that he was putting up. And, if you're starting from scratch, it's really important to start weaving that narrative web. That's how I always kind of refer to it. Like you're creating a story for Google so that I can see, especially if you're really trying to build authority in news. This is crucial that like, this isn't your first rodeo. You have covered this topic consistently. You know what you're talking about. And that's true of any website, any product. You want to be like making those connections on your website so that you can build that greater story and actually instill the trust in Google. And, hopefully that will lead to the results you want. So yeah, internal linking, alt text, captions. We could go down the line with everything else. But yeah, internal linking, the keyword research. I could go on and on forever, but those are the main ones I would say.
Let's interject really quick, talk a little bit about the AI, because that's a very popular question that we're getting. Now, Louisa, I know that you worked in a newsroom. You're probably familiar that the Washington Post has been using Heliograph, their AI, since about 2016 to write their content. Was there something similar being done in your newsroom with regards to using an AI to write a lot of that content?
So out of respect to, my previous employer, I'm not sure how much of this topic that they would want divulged.
So the answer is yes. You just can't say. You just can't say how much. No reason to say anything more. We'll move on.
The answer would be it depends.
It depends.
Oh, there we go. We got another one. And
you got me.
The winners of each It Depends is inside the chat box. You will get emailed afterwards. So
exactly. Don't worry about that, guys. Don't worry about that.
And I see you sifting, but I am very on top of that. But no, I meant what I said in that section though. I can speak to, I've seen instances where that made sense. I'll leave it at that, where it was like that did play a role, and it was clear like kind of where that stopped, and then a human voice did step in. And that's really my belief, is that that's like the ideal way to do it. And I see like the role that it can play, but I still think that human touch is crucial.
Right. So I know we've got this question. Let's just go ahead and knock it out right now. We've got a lot of questions on the call about whether or not Google's going to go after a lot more of this AI generated content, or even if tools like Rank IQ or Jasper or Write or Fraser or even Topic, which is AdThrive's tool, whether or not these are going to hurt anyone using those. And I think we basically only have to rely on the statements from Google, and they just updated their guidelines as of April the 13th to say that any artificially intelligence created content is against their guidelines. And so for those of you who haven't had a chance to read the commentary here, let's go ahead and paste that over here so you have those. We want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date content on that specifically. Let me go ahead and paste in the information to the chat box. Specifically, I know many of you follow John Mueller. We want to make sure that you're aware of what John says about this specifically. And he says, I quote, when talking about AI content, he says, if you're using machine learning tools to generate your content, it's essentially the same as if you were just shuffling words around on the page, looking up synonyms or doing the translation tricks that people used to do. Those kinds of things for us would be considered automatically generated content. And that means for us, it's still against the webmaster guidelines. So we would consider that to be spam, end quote. Now, I know a lot of you are using, for example, Rank IQ, which is very popular, has an extremely robust affiliate program, hence why it's very popular. That doesn't necessarily write the content for you. It provides you some semantic suggestions. It provides you examples and concepts that you'd want to weave into your content. It's not necessarily writing the content for you. You are. So in that aspect, it will lower your culpability a little bit. But for those of you on the call who have specifically asked me about Jasper, who specifically asked me about Write, who specifically contacted me about Fraser, and some of these other ones, which are actually 100% generating the content for you, even if you're going to play around with the wording a little bit, that might not be enough to insulate yourself from Google. My philosophy has always been, in the 20 plus years I've been doing this, is if Google can know something, I just assume they do know that thing and adjust accordingly. And so for those of you on the call who are concerned about whether or not these tools will put you at increased risk, I'm not going to say, well, you think I'm going to say? I'm going to say that it's possible. Okay. And you should adjust accordingly, specifically. Now, we've covered this, and I'm going to paste in a little bit more resources as we go along. But the bottom line with regards to those of you who are continuing to ask us all these about AI questions is, if you are rewriting or tweaking the AI outdated or outputted content with an eye towards providing, say, the best final project for the end user, I think that's a great approach to take, because we don't want it. We 100%, Google is 100% focused on making sure that we're providing the best answer to users. And so if we're allowing these programs to write this content for us, that's not smart long-term, and it's certainly not smart for users. So adjust accordingly.
It depends.
Oh, was that another it depends that just dropped it? I think that is.
Didn't hear it. He dropped out.
While I'm about to open us up into Q&A, Louisa, thank you so much. I feel like we need a whole episode of you just giving us all of this awesome information.
But we have all day.
I love it. Absolutely love it. But we've got 63 questions in the Q&A. That is insane. So we're going to get started. You guys are fantastic and have been upvoting the questions that are in the Q&A. In order to do that in the Q&A, there's a little thumbs up. Just press that. And if you want that question answered, it goes to the top. So we're going to go top to bottom down. Panelists, feel free, anyone who knows, to just jump in and say the answer. First question is from Liz. Is the Yoast FAQ box useful, or should I just put my questions and answers as a regular text box?
I'm going to take this one. It's very useful. And the reason it's very useful is that it allows Google to programmatically pull out that information for increased rich snippet visibility. I can't tell you how many times all we've done is add an FAQ block to a piece of content, and we've been able to generate a nice embedded, basically collapsible accordion rich snippet for that content. Now, it's very popular to add an FAQ block to a recipe post. Number one, understand that you are not going to be generating an FAQ rich snippet for the recipe post. And the reason that is because the primary FAQ page or the primary content on the page is recipe schema. The FAQ is never going to overwrite the recipe schema, and therefore you're not going to see an FAQ for a recipe post. Doesn't exist. I would have seen it by now. But if you want to use FAQ schema as a way for you to provide increased user experience on the page, I absolutely believe and recommend that. It's just that if you want the benefits of FAQ schema, you're going to have to add it to a page that doesn't necessarily have an overriding schema already on it. So an About Me page, a regular article page, something like that, very, very successful in the search results right now.
Good answer.
Thank you, Casey.
Good answer.
Moving on to the next one from Megan. How long does it really, I like how that was emphasized, take to see ranking improvements once SEO, keyword, and backend changes have been optimized? This seems like a setup question.
I know,
but
right?
Who wants to take it?
All together now?
Do it, Louisa. Do it.
It depends.
Yay! But it really does depend, right, Casey?
Yeah.
We all agree it depends. It depends, like what.
No comment.
Wait.
No
It
comment.
depends. It depends on which changes were made. Certain changes will get picked up quicker than others. And again, it's all a part of the overall SEO process, right? So you're making certain changes to your content, you're playing around with your titles. Those usually get picked up fairly quickly. Other things might take a little bit longer. Also, I don't want to say the word again, but you know what the word that I'm trying to say, on how frequently Google visits your website. Crawlability, accessibility, all of that.
Right. And again, I know that there's a popular question in here about, well, how long does it take to take changes after an audit or things like that?
Right.
And again, I'm not going to say the word. I'm going to say that there is a unique timeline. That's basically individualized to the site. Like, for example, had a live audit call this morning at 10 o'clock. They had an issue on their site. We literally went in, I changed one thing. I popped the URL into the URL inspector tool. Boom, within seconds, right there on the screen, we were able to see that the rich snippet had improved because we'd had corrected some missing data right there. So that kind of thing is very easy to see and very quickly. But when we talk about SEO, it's all about the little things. That's why audits are so incredibly effective. I'm making dozens, if not hundreds, of technical and content-based changes that work as an aggregate effect to lift the site up by means of that rising tide lifts all ship, so to speak, metaphor. And that's why audits can be so successful. But that's also why audits can change. They might greatly impact a site that has a, quote, a shit ton of products. I believe that there's an actual metric term for that, shit ton. We can make changes. If a site comes to me with a significant amount of problems and we only make maybe 10 or 15% of those changes very quickly, but they're big problems, we could have a huge increase in visibility right away because we've made the site more algorithmically attractive to Google. Other sites may come to us with smaller problems, but they have to do a complete content audit, or they have to change plugins, or they have to get page speed dialed in. And it's a longer journey where you're going to see a gradual uptick in traffic, not a huge spike. And that's fine. But to say, how long does it take to see improvement? Again, that's germane to the site and its built-in problems.
I was gonna, if I may, I was gonna jump in with one thought on that too, because for anyone on this call who would be interested in venturing into the wilderness of news SEO, the timeline is completely different, just like the pace that it moves at and how quickly things can shift and changes that can happen, like when you switch up headlines, things like that. So I think also it can depend on the type of no, this is a classic one. I had to say it. It can really depend on the type of world that you're working in, the type of timeline that you're working on, because in the world of news SEO, little tweaks can make a big difference, and they can make a big difference very quickly.
Well, especially in headlines. I assume that you've been.
That's what I'm referring to.
You're referring to changing, I could change 7 headlines, and whichever one's performing the best, we're going to dynamically roll those out to a larger class of articles. So yeah, that's very
And
very
A/B
common.
testing is huge too, for that reason in the news world. So yeah, just something, to ponder.
That's awesome. A good prize. That's a really good prize. Congratulations.
Great prize, great It Depends dropping. Mine don't count, so don't get excited.
Right.
I can say it as
There you
much,
go.
and prizes don't happen.
Smart.
But
This
okay,
this
moving
this
to
next question is really awesome.
yeah, it's really good. And I'm very curious to see if there's different opinions here too. Next question from Darcy Baldwin. If a post was created with a poor URL, would it benefit to rewrite a new post with a better URL and updated keywords, or just live with the bad URL and update the post the best that you can?
Go, Casey.
I'm just going to paste over the quote directly from Google because, hey, that's why we have Google. Right here, folks. Again, this is a very popular question that we literally answer every week.
That's what I was gonna say.
And we don't need to change URLs. I can't tell you how many people have contacted me. Casey, I have a lime jello with marshmallows post here and it's not doing very well, but I want to change it and I'm just going to remove the marshmallows. I'm like, fantastic. No one but you is going to care what's in the URL. We're in a mobile first world. When's the last time you noticed what a URL looked like on your smartphone? Right. Not me. Okay, not me. And I watch a lot of
Amazon's URLs?
crazy cats playing pianos.
Right.
And I don't never look at the URL. Okay, so our goal is to reuse that. Once a URL is published, we've lost the URL signals to it. So just continue to take hopefully we've got some earned authority from that URL, because when we change URLs, all we do is wipe out all of our social signals, add complexities by means of internal redirects. Maybe we've created internal redirects on our site. We don't want to do that. We don't want to dilute that link juice, right? Right, Arson?
Don't say it,
that
man.
Sweet,
horrible
juice.
Horrible.
That sweet link juice. We don't want to dilute that.
Can I just throw in also, though, if you're not going to listen to Casey, at least add a redirect.
Yeah.
At least, or install
Andrew,
something like Yoast Premium
Andrew,
and have it automatically fix your mistakes.
Is there a way to prevent WordPress from rewriting the slug if you want to change the title?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So by default, it will generate a slug automatically. If you edit the slug the first time, it shouldn't rewrite it. Where I've seen it get into trouble is if you're using the default auto-created slug and then you later edit the title, it may change the slug on you, but you just have to manually change it back then. So you just have to catch it. But definitely if you are editing a title, definitely keep an eye on the slug and make sure it doesn't get auto-changed.
Perfect.
All right, perfect. Next question. How important is it to take a photo of all your ingredients and label the ingredients on the photo?
How does she pronounce her name? Is that Dawn? Dawn
Folkquest.
Yeah, I would have totally butchered that. So.
Oh, yay! Thanks,
we got
Dawn.
it.
Oh, good, fantastic. Well, you know what? I do recommend it, and the reason I recommend it is that people love the shit out of seeing everything labeled in a recipe post. I don't know. You've heard me say this repeatedly. I always optimize for toddlers and drunk adults. And when we're optimizing for toddlers and drunk adults, having a nice, clear photo of all the ingredients is the easiest way to do it, so that if someone's on their phone and they're walking through the store, they can literally just reach up and pull those ingredients off the shelf. And frankly, if you're not doing that and you're an experienced bloggers, you're probably getting your ass kicked by the wave of newer bloggers who've come in who decided to start a blog during COVID. And it's been a deluge of new bloggers on the scene who have gone out and got audits immediately, gone out and invested in the best equipment, gone out and watched every webinar they've done, and have just decided, every recipe that I'm going to publish is going to have this incredible detail. And they're the ones that have been qualifying for Mediavine and AdThrive at a record pace. So I know a lot of people are like, man, that's so much work. I got to take a photo of the ingredients, and I got to add process shots. And man, I got to show my expertise by talking about a couple of these ingredients. Our goal is to be useful, not to write a novel. And I think that you can easily do both by still providing a quality experience with a photo of the ingredients.
Casey, what about labeling the ingredients in the shot?
I think it's great. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at an Indian recipe and I had no idea what the heck that ingredient was.
Would you say that it's on a case-by-case basis? Like for simpler recipes, it's probably not needed, or would you recommend that the blogger does it for every recipe?
I actually saw a recipe the other day for pumpkin juice, and it had 3 ingredients and they were labeled, and I still appreciated it. So I'm just one of those people that it's, it's not going to take a lot more time for you, but it's something that I think your users will appreciate. And again, folks on the call, when I give this advice, it's not just that I like it. Is we've literally done nothing but usertesting.com surveys of tens of thousands of people at home navigating that recipe sites over the years. And those are the kind of nuggets that we get back. The other one, which is really cool, is that people hate printing out recipe cards that are over 2 pages. So if you don't remember anything else today, remember that.
Yeah.
Please do not stuff your recipe cards and make them 3, 4, or 5 pages. But
Pumpkin
back to the
juice?
labeled photos. That's what we want to be thinking of, is we want to be useful and we want to make a visual impression.
Pumpkin juice?
Oh,
Yeah,
Go ahead,
it's
Andrew.
we
a
just have to
pumpkin.
move past the pumpkin juice, guys.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just no. I'm going to throw in a technical thing. If you're putting text in an image, make sure your alt text also factors that in. So for somebody who can't see the image, if it is your leftover Halloween pumpkin that you're turning into pumpkin juice, you put that in the alt text as well. So whatever text is on the photo, make sure that's included.
Perfect. Okay, next question from Sonila. I'm so sorry if I did that terribly. I try to keep a balance between posting new recipes and updating older ones. Is there a point in the blogging journey where you would suggest a blogger focuses for a while on only updating older content?
Do it. Do it. Say it. Say it.
I'm not saying it.
Say it.
Andrew?
It depends.
I think, okay, I'll jump in real quick. And I know Casey talks about this very frequently. You've spent all this time developing content. You've planned the recipe, you've cooked the recipe, you've developed the recipe, you've shot the recipe, you wrote the content. If you did a good job at selecting the topic and it's a decent topic and there's demand for it, it's definitely worth your time from an ROI perspective to go back and rework or reoptimize or update that piece of content, since you've already put in the work, right? Again, it largely you need to strategize around if the topic is, I avoided saying that. The topic is still a good topic. Definitely, I wouldn't put efforts. I like to work smarter, not harder. I wouldn't put an effort into just updating it just because it's old and hasn't been touched. If there's demand for it, it's still current. Definitely put in the time into updating.
Usually there's a breakdown. Usually most bloggers, especially successful bloggers who are, again, have approached this as a business and not a hobby, usually they're probably publishing 70% of the content they have on their site or that they're regularly publishing is republishing. Is content that they're finally getting around to going back and improving because they're better bloggers than they were a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. And this goes to everyone. I was very fortunate to have an audit recently with Sally's Bacon Addiction, one of the most successful bloggers in the world, one of the very nice site, but she has recipes on her site that she has not touched in years. And it was a matter of pulling those recipes out into a sheet so she was able to go back and start with a game plan so that she could update these recipes. Even though they're successful recipes, she knows they can be better. And that's what we're trying to do, is making our recipes the best they can be. And sometimes that means revisiting them regularly, even if they're doing great.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next question. We are flying through these. Next question from Chrissy. Any speculation if there was specific things that prompted drops or gains in the latest core update? Oh.
Well, if I could just quickly,
we speculate.
We can speculate, but we're not going to say anything else about it. The thing to be aware about with these core updates is that Google provides a lot of information on what they could and could not be. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. I'm going to go ahead and paste over some resources here for those of you on the call who are still confused about what a core update is, what you should be looking for, why they affect you. Core updates are really Google's attempt to improve the search results at scale, because the whole point of that is they're designed to ensure that overall Google is delivering on their mission to provide the best relevant and authoritative results possible based upon changing schemes and based on their better ability to use algorithmic learning. Now, a lot of people, when they say I've been affected by a core update, it's not necessarily they were affected negatively. It's just that others around them were affected positively, and that looks like a negative repercussion because you're now not ranking as high as others who've done a little bit better job than you on queries that you had a strong grasp on for years. So you drop from 1 to 2, or maybe 1 to 3, or even possibly out of the top 5, not necessarily because you did anything wrong, but because the other people below you did a lot more right. So the goal is necessarily to really understand and invest in site audits. And we've covered that in detail. That's why we have, I'll even have Ashley find how to conduct a New Year's site audit. You can take a look at that. and I'll see if I can have Ashley, I'm putting her on the spot here, find and paste in our webinar on core updates and algorithmic changes, because that's going to help you understand kind of what Google is looking for. I know everyone's called like, oh my God, what did Google focus on? It's never just one thing. That's why Google has millions of baby algorithms, as they like to say. All of them can focus and emphasize one thing over another all the time. So there's never really big trends. I mean, we've seen trends over the years because we've been able to make correlated patterns, but it's also, that's again, we get into the correlation causation issue, and we don't want to lose too much sleep over that. But it, honestly, end result is Google has refined search intent, changed search intent, or triggered certain parameters which emphasize one part of the algorithm over another. And we just have to kind of, based on trial and error, understand what that's done and give our best guesses on how we can improve or recover lost rankings.
Okay. Next question from Joanne. Besides writing good content, what do you, besides writing good content, what do you think is the #1 thing a blogger can do for Google?
Send them candy.
What can a blogger do for Google?
Pay for ads. Just kidding. Don't pay for ads.
Don't pay for ads.
There's not one thing. It's a bunch of things that have to come together.
Would you say it depends?
No, I'm not going to say that.
You wouldn't say
I'm
that.
not going to say no.
I think someone did though.
I wouldn't
I
say
think
that.
someone did.
I think maybe
some people might say that. I wouldn't say that.
Well, you know what? I would look at a site and say it depends.
Would you? Would you say?
Right.
Would you say that?
Is that 2 in a row?
In fact, I did say that. Just trying to help you out, Ashley. We got a lot of prizes to get through.
Look, it's
Thank you.
to answer the question. I always explain this way. Doesn't matter how fast the car is. If the driver is not a good driver, it's not going to go very far or very fast. And the content is your driver, right? Google might look past certain technical issues. Google might look past other issues if your content is strong enough. And Google has said this in the past, that if this is a good resource, we're going to show it, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The same reason why schema is not a ranking factor, just because there's
Mm-hmm.
certain people, certain sites, certain CMSs that just won't support it, right? Your content is the most important, and choosing the right content, making sure your topics are going to not only help position you as an expert about what you're writing about, but also are topics that are driving traffic consistently, right? That's the most important part. Everything else can be built and fixed around it. You are the driver. The content depends on you.
And just as a kind of one very quick note on that, it's just sometimes through no fault of your own, something is changed at Google's end, and you're just not going to be a benefit of that change. Intent is a great example of that, where we've seen over the last several core updates, Google's changed intent on very big keyword phrases, things like chicken recipes, where Google used to literally show individual chicken recipes for that in the carousels. Honestly, that's not the case anymore. Now it's more roundup and resource focused, because they're understanding that when people are searching for a plural, they're probably searching for more than one recipe. And we're finding that there's an increased amount of real estate focused on those plural searches, whereas opposed previously, 1 or 2 bloggers were getting probably an unfair amount of traffic based upon their 1 or 2 specific recipes. And that, of course, looks devastating to someone who has a really big keyword and they're like, holy cow, why did I just get dropped to the bottom of page 1 or the top of page 2? Didn't do anything wrong. It's just the intent of that search has changed, and Google's refining that a little bit more to match necessarily what users are more looking for.
Can I also just throw in also, and this is actually content related, is being realistic about the keywords you're targeting. So if you're targeting roast chicken, there's a lot of competition, right? So it's not just about having great content, it's about having the right content that will actually be able to compete at whatever level you're at. So you may need to chase longer tail keywords that aren't as competitive and still have some search volume, right? But if you're going to try to go after the biggest terms ever, like roast turkey, and you wonder why you're not ranking, it's because there's a bazillion pages that are going to be great at that and have all those other elements. So I think being strategic about the content you create is a helpful approach.
Smart. Next question by Casey Rooney. What's the best way to write descriptions for category pages, and how much does it matter for SEO?
It matters a lot.
Does
But also
anything else?
you want to make sure that it's descriptive, right? So look, you want to look at category page as a roundup, essentially, right? If we're talking in terms of that recipe bloggers understand, your category pages should be optimized as if they're roundups, right? So you want to explain what this page is about, right? You also want to look at it from a perspective of this is an experience, right? A user landed here because Google pointed them to this page when they presented Google with a query, which Google interpreted as them not being refined enough to show you an individual post, right? Google is showing you a page where you can make a decision on which post you want to look at. That's your category page or a roundup. So you want to cater to that experience, that intent, right? Really, and you've heard me say this plenty of times, being able to effectively predict and address that primary, secondary intent on any page, the intent behind that query is going to be a very strong signal to Google from a content perspective. But also it depends.
There we go. Like, that was really well crafted. You managed to fully answer it with that one. All right, sounds like we have another winner. While I'm getting the name for that one, can someone address Angelica's question? My traffic tanked in the last month or so. Were there any major Google updates, or is it likely because I did not publish as often anymore? So publishing frequency, that's a great question.
Well, publishing frequency is not a ranking factor by itself, but publishing more content, especially if it's high quality content, only helps you. It increases your freshness boosts, it increases your crawling frequency, it increases the ability that you will generate substantially more long tail keywords, which will lead to more traffic. But there was a Google Core update. It was in May, end of May. Louisa, was it 26th? I don't remember exactly, but it was late May.
It was end of May. That's what I remember. End of May, yeah.
And just understand that Google updates their algorithm every day, multiple times every day. So understand that we don't want to get fixated much on these core updates. I mean, I know they can be dramatic, especially if you were negatively impacted by them, but you should be looking at two things. You should be looking, number one, that you're actually looking at the correct data. I can't tell you how many people have had issues with both Google Analytics and Search Console tracking data over the last month or so. And number two, that you don't have any seasonality that's playing into your drops in traffic. Is it very possible that you're experiencing the summer slump, which is very popular in the recipe niche because we have more people going outside now. We have more people doing outside activities. We have more people like me who are laying lazily in the pool, drinking margaritas after 5 o'clock most days. So if you're a part of that group, that's going to impact your bottom line traffic. So we pasted over some resources. Please review those. It'll show you how to do a traffic drop audit. It'll show you how to go into Search Console and review a before and after to see what's going on. And then you could make some determinations and takeaways from that data.
And if I could just share one thing really quick to circle back on it, because I love that point, Casey, this is where you could use that Google Trends feature and look at seasonality and see, oh, I know like this, like my traffic around this particular theme dropped off. Let me go in and take a look. Is search interest also dropping off around that time every single year? That's an excellent way to use that part of the tool. So jump on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for pitching that up, Casey. That was perfect.
Absolutely. Candy corn margaritas. I would absolutely drink a candy corn margarita, Paula. Thank you very much.
Pumpkin juice margaritas.
Oh my God, pumpkin juice.
Yeah, polyjuice. I was thinking the polyjuice. Remember the polyjuice from the Harry Potter movies?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they actually have a polyjuice cocktail now at Wizarding World. So it's pretty good.
Love it.
Yeah. Good times.
Right. We've got just a few more minutes left, so we're going to try and fly through some of these questions and the last of the It Depends prizes. Next question from Jessica. If my post moves from position 1 to position 2 or 3, should I update it or not touch it?
I'll take it.
Go for it.
Don't touch it. See what happens.
Why?
Well, look, it depends. But There's a reason your post moved down, right? And you want to take a look at a few things first before you go in and start touching things. So you want to take a look at who started ranking above you. What are they doing that's a little bit different than yours? What are they doing better? Are they covering, are they the same type of site? Is Google maybe positioning somebody else on top that's presenting a content that satisfies a different intent? Did Google change its understanding of the query, and now the page is laid out a little bit differently? Moving from position 1 to position 2 from an SEO perspective is not a big deal. We don't consider, like, I personally don't consider that to be a big deal, but for you, as
but
bloggers,
it is a big deal. I mean,
it's a huge
20,
deal, right?
20 or 40% change in traffic.
50% drop in traffic most of the time, right? But you don't, like, it's still working, it's still making you money. So you don't want to go in and start like with a machete and start like hacking things off and changing things, right? Look at what's ranking above you. Be smart about decisions, track your decisions. And I personally always recommend, in my opinion, my process might be different from Casey and Andrew and then Louisa and everybody else, is I like to say, you're not in a rush, single variable changes, see how they work for you, make sure you track everything. I also like to first, and this is just me, I also first like to play around with secondary signals, which is stuff that I can do without touching the content. And that's
like external links,
external backlinks, internal links, and a little bit of that, a little bit of focusing.
Agreed. All right, next question from Daniela. What is a good way to build backlinks that does not include hero?
What is hero?
Maybe I think maybe Haro.
Haro.
Yeah,
Haro.
Haro.
Right.
Let's help a reporter out.
Right.
Yeah, correct. Very popular.
Yeah.
Right. Podcast. Casey, you had like a whole thing on this, right?
That's correct. We've got a whole interview on link building, shows podcasts, it shows how to use, reach out for editorial links. It shows, pull marketing with content. It shows how to use link sharing groups. And when I say link sharing groups, I mean mostly recipe sharing groups. So
cover your ears, Louisa.
Yeah.
Earmuffs.
Right there. Now, I'm going to show you guys where to get the primest, fattest links. It's so awesome. DA 47 plus.
So much.
We use individual C-class IPs, and I got them filtered through three.
PR8.
PR8.
PR8 do follow links from sidebars.
Correct. That's
site
correct.
wide.
Yeah.
Is that a new CrossFit workout?
It is. PR6, PRX, PR8. But yeah, and link building's tough. And I get that, guys. I'm there with you. Trust me. It's very, very tough, especially for the average blogger. And the reason that the problem is that when most people are looking to share recipes, they're literally looking at the top 5 and that's it. So if you're in the top 5, that's where you're going to be garnering your links. Your goal is to get up to the top 5 first, which is why it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you end up being successful, you tend to be more successful because you tend to be in the spots where people are going to link to you readily over and over again.
Right.
Sally's Bacon Addiction. They literally have never had to reach out for a link for years. They have links from everyone because they're always at the top of the search results. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But we have plenty of resources. We had a whole webinar on link building. We've got plenty of resources that you can take a look at. But don't give up. You can do it. Network with other bloggers. Just don't try to, put together a network. Just, hey, it's me and 4 buddies and we're linking together back and forth on every recipe. Kind of easy to find that footprint algorithmically. So maybe we don't want to do that stuff. So we're just, link when it makes sense and keep it up.
There's lots of cool stuff you can do. Like with Louisa can probably talk a little bit about using Google Trends to really take a look at what's being popular, what's interesting right now. Go local. Go look at like create like a meal plan for, I don't know, for school age for kids for lunch, right? Go local. Go to a news station and say, hey, I'd like to do like a kids cooking class or something instructional. Create some buzz around you. Local stations love this kind of like good feel PR stuff. Do a press release. Use that to then get yourself interviewed on podcasts. Create a process for yourself. But yeah, there's tools, and then we talk about a lot of this stuff on our webinars.
Another thing I'd suggest is I see links as similar to respect, where if you want to get respect, you have to give respect. So another strategy could be to be linking to other sites you like and giving them the link love. And then you can certainly be like, hey, I love this recipe. and email the person and say, just, I linked to this. And then that's going to get them on their radar. You've done something nice for them, and maybe they'll return the favor. You don't have to ask for something, but maybe they'll search your site next time they're looking for a link. So I think it's about contributing to the overall community as well.
Now, I've tried to do that to Andrew multiple times, and he's ignored me.
I will never give Casey a link.
He even blocked me on Twitter. It was ridiculous. I had this fantastic cat fancy resource, and he just would not link to it. It's a point of contention to this day.
It's about building relationships. It's about building relationships. You can do a lot of ego baiting. You can do collaborations. You can approach people who, like somebody who has like a really strong site but really poor social, right? And you have really strong social and not so much authority. You can do like an exchange. You can like build those relationships. That's the most important part about link building, is establishing those relationships that you can always tap into.
And sending unsolicited gifts and cash. That helps.
No,
okay, we have time for
earmuffs.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Kidding.
Yes, we will definitely have Louisa back on.
Oh, yay.
100%.
I want to be back on. That's
Absolutely.
right.
Well,
And
it
I would
depends.
say that it doesn't depend. I will come on for anything.
There we go. We got one more, it depends on there. And our very last question before we're going to have to wrap up, from Ashley: I've been naming my images with the recipe name, but I've read that it's better to name each image with what's happening in the image, like alt text. Is this something that actually matters for the file name? It seems like more work up front, and I don't want to bother with it if it doesn't actually matter for SEO purposes with the file name in particular.
I would love to know where you read that. I would love to know where you read that, because that is incredibly poor advice. You're going to get these incredibly long URLs with unnecessary information, which isn't going to help you at all. I really want you to paste over. I'm absolutely convinced, Ashley, that you probably misunderstood Alika, if that's
We'll
what you
find
said.
them and we'll fight them with our fists.
Because when we want to keep our file names succinct. We'll use 1 or 2 major focus keywords and call it a day, but we don't need to be spamming file names. It's not going to have any value. So pretty sure that maybe you might have misunderstood Alika, because she's usually pretty good with her cooking with keyword stuff. But if not, let me know and I'll drop her a stern email. But I'm pretty sure that that's not what we want to do. We definitely don't want to be having you make unnecessary work going back and changing all of your images, which will just reset any image visibility you have in Google Images there. So definitely wouldn't recommend that.
And also, alt text is not for SEO; it's for accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be keyword stuff in your alt text. Make it actually usable. You can do both. You can win at both. Just accessibility first.
Yeah, my pumpkin juice. It's okay to say a pumpkin juice cocktail in a nice,
and a barf emoji,
and a pumpkin juice cocktail in a nice cocktail glass with little ferns in the background. Totally descriptive. Alt text. You have your focus keyword in there. It won't kill you. You'll be fine.
And very quickly moving away from pumpkin juice conversation. It's 3 o'clock. We are officially done, and we have one more prize. So can we all count down and say it all together? 1, 2, 3.
3. It depends.
Depends.
There you go. So it's really, we're gonna have 4 more prizes, right? Because it was really 4 individual. No.
I mean, I want the It Depends t-shirt. Can I order one? I want
Yeah,
it.
we should definitely get those individual. And I got to say,
definitely
I
make sure.
apologize for those of you on the call who are really looking forward to a Casey pillow. I was as disappointed as you were. I can't believe that we don't have any Casey head pillows left. So we will get those. We will absolutely get those ordered and give those away next time, because I know they're very popular, as they should be. So I appreciate that.
Kind of a big deal. But thank you everyone for joining us and helping us celebrate 2 years of SEO for bloggers. Louisa, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Louisa.
We absolutely
Very nice
want to have you back.
Thank you, everybody.
Andrew,
I had so much
Arsen,
fun.
Casey, thank you guys.
Thanks,
Everyone have a
Ashley,
great
for hosting.
day, night.
Thanks,
Bye,
Ashley.
everyone.
See y'all soon.